The film begins with two friends, Daniel and Lucas, are driving down a dark road. When Lucas starts drinking water, Daniel warns him that he will not stop the car for a bathroom break. A little later, Lucas begs Daniel to pull over anyway so he can quickly pee. Daniel is furious because of his earlier warning, but he finally agrees, giving Lucas a strict 2-minute time limit. After relieving himself, Lucas hears the car horn blaring continuously. He walks back and finds all the car doors wide open, but Daniel is missing. Lucas closes everything up, completely missing a large claw mark on the car. He calls out for his friend, but gets no answer, and when he dials Daniel's phone, he realizes it was left behind in the vehicle, right as Daniel's body falls, breaking the windshield. Daniel weakly begs for help before an unseen force drags his body away and drops it onto the road. Lucas rushes out to check on him, only to find that Daniel is already dead. Terrified, Lucas gets back into the car and speeds off. As he drives as fast as he can, Lucas keeps passing the exact same entity standing on the roadside over and over, as if he is trapped driving in a loop. Suddenly, the entity appears right inside the car, sitting directly next to him in the passenger seat. The story goes back in time to a couple named Maddie and Tyler. They quit their jobs and sold their house because Tyler bought a van, wanting them to travel and live on the road full time. To set up the van, Tyler puts up a St. Christopher medal for protection. Maddie also carries an emergency GPS tracker with her. 6 weeks into their trip, they try to visit a nearby hot spring but get stuck in a bad traffic jam. Forced to give up, Tyler parks the van in a residential neighborhood so they can rest. While sitting there, Maddie watches a family celebrating inside a nearby house and gets very emotional, showing that she doesn't actually like the van life. Noticing her mood, Tyler suddenly proposes to her and Maddie happily says yes. Their happy moment is cut short when a neighbor knocks on the door and demands they move the van. They are forced to drive away late at night. Because Tyler is completely exhausted, Maddie takes over the driving while Tyler falls asleep. While driving, Maddie sees a car coming up fast behind them, the exact same car where Lucas was driving to flee the entity. Lucas's car violently overtakes their van, waking Tyler up, but crashes just a short distance ahead. Tyler immediately calls 911. Maddie sees Lucas try to get out of the car and rushes over, but she watches as an unseen force violently pulls him back inside. She also notices 3-line scratch marks on Lucas's car. When Tyler rushes over, Maddie tells him someone just dragged Lucas back in, but Tyler checks the car and finds no one else there. He climbs in to help Lucas breathe, but the airbag suddenly deploys, killing Lucas instantly. Outside, Maddie spots a dark figure standing in the shadows, but it quickly vanishes. Soon, the police arrive. Tyler stays to give his statement. Maddie goes back to the van completely unaware that the ghostly man is standing right behind her inside the vehicle, but the moment she turns around, he disappears. They both stay at a hotel that night, where Maddie repeatedly checks her van's dashcam footage. She discovers that the exact moment Lucas's car sped past their van, the footage became completely corrupted. The next morning, Tyler notices 3 deep-line scratch marks on the side of their own van, and he has no idea where they came from. Maddie points out that she saw those exact same scratches on Lucas's crashed car the night before. However, Tyler shrugs it off and explains that they are heading to a burning van festival that day and can just fix the scratches once they get there. The two finally arrive at the burning van festival, which is packed with other van lifers. Tyler sees Brad Full, a popular content creator who runs a YouTube channel called Vandalize. Being a huge fan, Tyler immediately strikes up a conversation with him. Meanwhile, Maddie wanders away from the crowd and comes across a bulletin board covered in numerous missing person posters. Right underneath the posters, she spots a chilling drawing of a stick figure marked with the exact same 3 claw scratches that she found on their van. A woman named Diana, who has been living the van life for 2 decades, approaches Maddie and they start chatting. During their conversation, Maddie brings up last night's horrific accident and the mysterious 3 claw marks. Diana's face instantly goes serious. She asks Maddie if they stopped their vehicle at the crash site. When Maddie admits they did, Diana warns her from now on they must never drive at night, and if they absolutely have to, they must never stop the van for any reason. Maddie is a little scared by the warning, but then Tyler walks over. He happily shows that he managed to get the deep scratches on their van painted over for free. They enjoyed the festival that night. The next night, Maddie walks to the van after the gym and hears footsteps behind her. Terrified, she turns around but sees no one. When she looks back, the van itself mysteriously moves away from her. She runs inside the van to hide. Inside, her phone gets an alert. The corrupted dashcam video from Lucas's accident is now cleared up. In the video, Maddie sees the ghostly man sitting in Lucas's passenger seat, looking right at her. Suddenly, she looks at the live camera screen and sees the ghost standing outside outside, and he comes closer to the van. A scared Maddie texts Tyler to hurry back. Before Tyler can get there, the ghost appears inside the van and grabs Maddie by the throat to choke her. Maddie fights back. She grabs the rearview mirror to hit him. The St. Christopher pendant hanging on the mirror hurts the ghost, and he runs away. Tyler rushes back, and Maddie tells him everything. Tyler checks the van, but finds no one. Maddie tries to show him the dashcam video of Lucas's car, but the ghost is no longer visible in the footage. The next morning, the couple stops at a store. Maddie finds a book called Haunted Highways of America. The book explains the hobo code, which are symbols travelers use to warn each other about danger or safety. In the book, she sees the 3-claw mark. It means danger. Maddie buys the book. When they walk outside, they see the same 3-claw scratch has appeared on their van again. Terrified, Maddie searches the internet for the 3-claw sign. She reads that it has been seen on many cars before bad accidents. The stories say that if these marks appear on your car, it means you are marked as a victim by the passenger man. This passenger man is the same ghost that attacked Maddie earlier. Maddie is very scared, but she does not tell Tyler about it. Outside, Tyler sets up a movie night and they start watching a film together. While watching, Tyler tells Maddie he found a remote job so he can earn money while they travel. He then asks Maddie why she isn't wearing her engagement ring yet. Maddie says she loves him, but she is not enjoying the van life. She explains that she grew up in many different foster homes and now wants a stable house. She thought she would like the van, but after months on the road, she knows she doesn't. Suddenly, the power cuts off. They see a shadow behind the movie screen. Tyler pulls the cloth down, but no one is there. They look around the dark forest and spot the passenger man. Scared, they both run inside the van. The passenger man violently shakes the van. When the shaking stops, Tyler realizes he left the van keys outside. Tyler goes out to get them and hears keys jingling. He finds them hanging from a tree branch. He grabs them, but the passenger man suddenly scares him. Tyler and Maddie rush back into the van and drive away fast. Later, the couple stops at a roadside restaurant. Inside the restaurant, Maddie tells Tyler everything she found about the passenger man. She explains that the ghost marked their van because they stopped to help at Lucas's car accident. Tyler suggests dumping or burning the van to get rid of the curse, but Maddie tells him that won't work because the passenger man has marked them, not just the vehicle. She says they need to find Diana, the woman she met at the Burning Van Festival. Since Diana warned Maddie about the passenger man, Maddie thinks Diana knows how to escape. They remember Diana said she was going to Flagstaff, the seafood restaurant in the desert. Maddie and Tyler decide to drive to Flagstaff to find her. To stay safe, they plan to only travel during the day, since the passenger man cannot appear in the daylight. Just before sunset, one of the van's tires blows out. Tyler tries to change it as fast as he can. However, the bolts for the tire are missing. Tyler finally spots them underneath the van. With no other choice, Tyler crawls under the van to grab the bolts. While he is under there, the jack lifting the van begins to loosen on its own. At the same time, Maddie sees the van door open. The passenger man appears, grabs Maddie, and drags her away into the dark. Seeing this, Tyler tries to crawl out to help her, but the heavy van falls on his leg and hurts him. Even with his injured leg, Tyler manages to free himself. He quickly fixes the tire, gets into the van, and drives down the road to search for Maddie. Meanwhile, Maddie wakes up in the dark and finds a crashed car nearby. Soon, Tyler appears and runs to hug her, but it is actually the passenger man in disguise. The ghost takes control of Maddie's body. He forces her to kneel and raise her hands right in the middle of the road. At the same time, the real Tyler is driving his van very fast, searching for her. Suddenly, he sees Maddie. Tyler slams on the brakes and stops the van just inches away from her. The two drive to the camp where Diana is staying. Many van lifers are parked there. Tyler and Maddie ask around for Diana, but the people refuse to talk. They angrily tell the couple to leave because they brought the evil passenger man with them. Diana appears, but also refuses to help at first. She tells everyone to run inside their vans and lock the doors. Maddie begs for help and mentions how her St. Christopher chain hurt the ghost. Hearing this, Diana changes her mind. She tells them an old story about a traveler who was also hunted by the passenger man. The traveler ran into the church of St. Christopher and escaped the ghost. No one knows where the church is because it is not on any map, but Diana says she has an idea where to find it. Diana gets into her van so Tyler and Maddie can follow her, but just as they are about to leave, the passenger man suddenly appears and kills Diana instantly. Seeing Diana die, Tyler and Maddie drive away fast. They stop at a gas station. In the morning, they buy a lot of St. Christopher medals from the store. They hang the medals all over their van because the items hurt the passenger man. Later, Maddie is driving. They both fall asleep for a second. When they wake up, they are shocked to see it is already night again. Tyler tells Maddie they need to go back to town. Maddie turns the van around, but sees they are running out of gas. Then, Maddie sees a hobo sign on a billboard. It points toward a safe route off the main road. Maddie decides to follow the sign. Tyler thinks it is not safe. He tells her the passenger man might have made the sign to trap them, but Maddie chooses to trust the symbol. Soon she finds another hobo sign, follows it, and reaches a new road. The couple thinks they are on the right path to find the church. Then they see a broken car blocking the road, so Tyler gets out to guide Maddie past it. As they move forward, they see the St. Christopher Church in the distance. However, the road ahead is covered in hundreds of dead bodies. Tyler realizes this is just an illusion made by the passenger man, so he tells Maddie to keep driving right over them. As they are driving, suddenly, the van's back door flies open and all the St. Christopher medals are sucked out and slams the door shut. But when he turns around, the passenger man is already behind him and throws Tyler out of the moving van. The ghost moves toward Maddie to attack her. Maddie slams on the brakes, throwing the passenger man through the windshield. He lands on the holy ground of the church and smoke begins to rise from his body. Since he is still moving, Maddie drives the van straight into him, crashing through the church doors. Inside, the passenger man hits a large statue of St. Christopher. He gets up again, so Maddie puts the van in reverse to hit him one more time. The crash had bent the statue, making the sharp rod in its hand point straight out. When Maddie hits the ghost this time, he is impaled on the rod. He melts and disappears, causing the church to catch fire. Maddie escapes the flames and finds Tyler waiting outside. Tyler looks at the burning van and says, "Everything is lost." Maddie replies, "Not everything," and shows him her engagement ring. Tyler puts the ring on her finger, agreeing to leave the van life for a stable home. Soon, the police and an ambulance arrive. Tyler had used Maddie's GPS tracker to call them for help, and the movie ends. And that wraps up Passenger. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling movie stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.